10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Who that? Who that? Who that? Who that? Gothic news, gothic news, gothic, 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 gothic.
Hello! Welcome to the Fox Den here on HNIC Network. I'm your host, Fox Squire, and tonight we're going to embrace the spectacle with two fantastic guests, Mr. Clever and Anja Keister. Hey, hello again!
Hello!
Welcome to the Fox Den.
Thanks for having us.
Yes. I haven't seen you guys live. Oh my gosh, I think it's been at least a year for both of you. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it's been a year for both. So I know who you are, but let's go ahead and get into who you both are to the audience here. Let's start with Mr. Clever this time, and then
God. I never know what to say.
Well, here, why don't I start with, how did you get started in what it is that you do? So those two things. What did you do, and how did you get started?
As a cosplayer?
Sure.
I started back in 2013, late 2013, because a bunch of my friends were doing it, and it seemed fun, and I wanted to try it. So here I am.
Awesome. And then that was 2013 that you got started in cosplaying. And you have a very specific cosplay that you do. So if you can touch on that, where that came along in the timeline of Clever, that would be amazing. And then Anja, you can jump right in after Mr. Clever completes.
I didn't know what the word cosplay meant. Honestly, I never used the word until like 2015 because I thought it was cultural appropriation. I was like, I can't do that because I'm not I literally thought it was just for Japanese cosplayers. I was like, I never used the word. But I had a bunch of friends that did it, so I wanted to try it because it looked like fun. And I tried a bunch of characters and I hated it. Like, this is ridiculous. This is not for me. F this crap. Like, no. And then I've always been, a huge fan of Doctor Who. I've always been a huge fan of Neil Gaiman. And we were watching one of the episodes that Neil Gaiman wrote for Doctor Who called Nightmare in Silver. And it was one of Matt Smith's episodes. Who's my absolute favorite Doctor. And Mr. Clever, sort of the Cybermen, kind of tried to take over the Doctor, but didn't quite succeed. He's almost like a split personality. And I just lost my mind when he came on screen. I'm like, that is my costume. That's my character. And I've literally only been this character for the past 8 years, going on 9. I just recently started doing Paul Atreides, but literally 9 years of just this.
And we will totally get into more of that because I do want to hear about that story. And you go right ahead whenever you're ready and tell us when you started, what you were doing, and then what you do. I know it's a list, as it is for both of you technically, but feel free to highlight what you want.
I started doing burlesque in 2010 is when Anja Keister first stepped on a stage, and I think I started performing in 2011. I was a burlesque performer, and then I quickly became a burlesque producer and host. So that's my main thing. I now just kind of do New York City nightlife. Well, when there is nightlife, when there's not a pandemic. So I do like trivia hosting, drag hosting, stuff like that. The occasional like cosplay at conventions and stuff like that. But I've actually been, because of the pandemic, I really started getting into Twitch streaming. So I now do that three nights a week, just as a new way to reach out to fans and people who want to engage with me.
And now you also, both of you have plenty of, let's say, nerd cred as it goes along. I believe both of you have done role-playing games, if I'm not mistaken. I think you just got a new one in Mr. Clever, and then Anya, you were doing more role-playing games in your Twitch streams. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been the name of the burlesque show that I produce is D20 Burlesque, and we started with D&D themed, like role playing game themed burlesque and stuff like that. So during the pandemic, I started doing multiple ones. So now I have 3 campaigns that I do, that I'm two that I play in, one that I run, and now I'm also running one-offs on my Twitch stream. So yeah, I throw some dice. I roll some dice every now and then.
Yeah. You dabble, as it were. And then
That's amazing.
You were showing one that you are playing now. What's the name of it?
Who are you talking to, me?
Yeah, Mr. Clever, you were just showing one.
Oh, I literally I don't even know if it's an RPG. I haven't actually opened the box yet, but I'm a huge fan of the video game Horizon Zero Dawn. So the board game just came in. I don't know if it's an RPG, but I'm also obsessed with Borderlands, and we just got the Bunkers and Badasses actual campaign. It's friggin' gorgeous, and I can't wait to play.
That sounds fantastic. Yes, I'm in the middle of a campaign for Ars Magica. I don't know if you've played that one yet, but it's a lot of fun. I've only just kind of gotten in a little bit. It's so you know how there's always like a wizard class and things like that. Instead of the wizard class kind of like you have to memorize these specific spells, you can in the game, it's specific for just wizards, and you can in the game go ahead and do spontaneous magic. There are rules to it, but you are trying to make a coven with your other people that are there, and then there's also coven folks. So you actually do a companion who is a non-wizard character, and then you have a wizard character who's called a mage with it. So I also like to dabble in the dice as it goes.
I like that phrase. I dabble in the dice. That's great.
I like to dabble in the dice. Yes, feel free to utilize it every time you want to. Just put that in the pocket right there. Now, aside from dabbling the dice, as we've now coined, you both have done a level of cosplay. I know that with Anya, yours is more burlesque themed because yours specifically has some functionality to the costume. And then Mr. Clever, you have been doing your character, but you've done variations on your character. Tell me some more about the character for you, Mr. Clever, as far as not just where it came from, because you were telling us that already, but how these variations, like what kept you going back to this and changing it up. And then Anya, if you could tell us a little bit about the different characters that you've done and just some favorites or fan favorites, whichever one you want. Anya, I'll have you start, and then Mr. Clever, if you want to just take the ball right after Anya's done, that'd be awesome.
Totally. So I'd say some of my more well-known acts are, I've been performing a version of Femme Cthulhu for 10 years now. I think it's something like that, where I'm just like this very cute, coquettish Cthulhu. And that has become a bit of a signature act for me. Like my wedding ring was a tentacle and all kinds of other stuff like that. My logo has tentacles on it. But I mean, I do everything from like, I've been doing a portal act that has 3 it's like morphed over the years of doing it. I do like Portal. I do like a lot of board games. I had one where I was a large D20, just like with legs sticking out. You know, I've done just a lot of different ones. But like you said, it's more, I'm doing it with the idea of doing burlesque within it. So when I get to actually do a cosplay just for fun, just like walk around a convention, it's always a treat. But I'm always looking to also just do like cosplay looks for Instagram and for photo shoots and stuff like that. So I like my Spock has become one that I go Vulcan every now and then for fun, just to do photos and things like that.
Yes, I definitely.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
I have a trill that I like. I love putting on the spots, just off cuff and grabbing a Star Trek uniform and throwing that on. I am an unjoined trill, and I'm usually an ensign. And then Mr. Clever, I know that the Clever has taken on its variations. I mean, in the time I've seen you, I know at least 5. There's a Hello Kitty one. I know there's a zombie one. There's a Borderlands. What what sparked you to make these variations on what you have and kept you just coming back to the Mr. Clever, aside from just the excitement of it? Is there anything else there?
I don't know what it was about that character that I connected with and just clicked, because he was literally only on screen for less than 10 minutes. I think I clocked it at like 9 point something minutes. So to have a costume, your one and only costume of one character that literally only had less than 10 minutes of screen time over 8 years, like, I felt like I kind of needed something to keep it interesting, to keep it alive. So yeah, I have the zombie, Hello Kitty, the Harry Potter one, Darth Clever, so I have a Star Wars one, the Borderlands. Oh my God, I'm missing some because I just realized that I have as many as I do cats. Like, I have a lot more than 5 cats. I'm sure all of my friends are like, dude, blah, 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 but I can't for the life of me remember what they are. But my favorite.
What really brought you back to all of them? And like you were saying, what is your favorite?
Like
as you're making them, I know it has to be, it still keeps the clever, but then it puts in that variation. So how do you do that?
My absolute favorite is my Borderlands one. I am absolutely obsessed with the video games Borderlands 1, 2, 3. Like, it's my life. And I always wanted to be a Borderlands cosplayer because I'm fascinated with the cel shading, and they look like they've just popped off the screen. So I was going to do a mashup between Mr. Clever and Handsome Jack, and it just wasn't working. It just looked stupid. So I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to make Mr. Clever Borderlands boss. And I just took the regular outfit and I just cel shaded everything myself. The hair, I made another one of these. It's all cel shaded. The coat, like all of it. And it is just, it's a bitch to wear, but it's so cool. I love it.
And you wore that to, I think, the Aresia Online and did the masquerade. Is that correct? Or
yes, the only time I've ever competed. Okay. Yeah, I debuted it at New York Comic Con 2019. So I haven't worn it out that much because, you know.
we haven't gone out that much.
Yeah, we haven't gone out that much.
I just want to point out how delightful it is. It's like the queer urge to have as many cosplays as cats is. That might be like the queerest thing I've heard in a while.
For the longest time, I only wanted to have 6 because of the song. I have 6 cats. Like, hi, I'm Anna Keister, and I have 6 cats. And then we started fostering this cat over the pandemic, and I'm like, well, we can't just give her back. So now I have 7, so it ruined the song. But I know I have 6 or 7 versions of Clever because I know that I have one for each cat, but I just can't for the life of me remember what they all are.
It's not a problem at all, because if people want to see more and want to know exactly which ones, they should definitely follow you on your Instagram, TikTok, and all the different things. And that's at Adventures of Clever, as you see on the bottom of the screen right there. And then for Anja, if you want to see more of these amazing different cosplays and things that Anja does, it's definitely Anja Keister for IG and for Twitch. Now, as we're going from the cosplay side, I know that both of you have been to quite a few different conventions when it comes along. I know for Mr. Clever, your home convention is Aresia. You and I have spoken about Aresia. I've been to Aresia with you. Anja, I don't know that you have a home con, but I know you've been to a lot of cons. PAX East comes to mind, Gen Con. There's just a lot of different ones along the way. What has been one of your best experiences at either your home con or a con? And then what has been one of the ones that you're like, ooh, that was not the best, without getting into too much detail, because, I do want to allow you your own privacy, but I know there are some things that always will touch. Mr. Clever, why don't you start us off? And that way, I know Anja's like going through the list of cons.
Oh my God, what is some of my favorite things that have happened at I always have so much damn fun at cons. I've never really been a person that goes for the celebrities, but sometimes I've stood in line with my friends that are, waiting for celebrities. I think the most fun I've ever had is just running around with my friends. Like, it's really, really hard for me to pick one instance. Like, all the times that I'm tying people up or people are tying me up and everyone's spanking each other and we've got rope and duct tape and whips and all this random shit all over the place. And the con people are like, calm the hell down. Like, you need to just, we just have so much fun. I mean, one of my favorite moments was watching CJ, my partner, get a hug from his doctor, and everybody that knows CJ knows that he really doesn't do the whole hug thing. So when this man came over to hug him, I was cackling like a witch in a Disney movie. Like, I couldn't contain myself. Everyone was looking at me like, what the hell is wrong with this person? I'm like, you got a hug. That was one of my favorites.
And that was at Arisha? Or what
no, I'm sorry. That was at Regen.
At which
Regeneration 2. It was called Regeneration 2. I think they went bankrupt, so I'm not sure. I don't think it's a thing anymore.
Yeah.
But oddly enough, my worst experiences happened at the same con. I was, trigger warning in case everybody, needs one, but I was accosted and molested and felt up and a bunch of stuff, and I didn't have no one at the con believed me. So that was by far my worst experience at a con. I wanted to quit everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so often that people mistake cosplay for consent. And it's one of the biggest problems that I have seen across the cons I've been to, where people are like, oh, clearly because you're wearing this costume, and it doesn't have to be a sexual costume. It's not about it being a sexy Pikachu or something. It's literally that there is a costume that somebody thinks, oh, I'm going to put my arm around, I'm going to snap there's just such a lack of communication that people just don't think about. I'm hoping that, especially, it's one of the things that I touched on with another in one of my other shows. I'm hoping that as people are starting to be more aware of their personal health, because they have to, they are also becoming aware of other people's personal space. If it's one thing that I've noticed when I've been out, is there are more people who are like, oh, excuse me. Oh, I'm just trying to get, they'll direct themselves and say, I'm trying to get over to one space, which is awesome. But and it's long overdue, but I'm hoping to keep that energy the same through all the 2020, all the 2022, all the 2023, just all the 2020s into the 3000s. It's what I'd like. Anja, what is your best worst at a con? And if you feel comfortable naming the con, go right ahead. If not, totally understand.
Yeah. I'd say some of my best ones, if I could have two, because one's a blanket one. One of the fun ones was very early on. I did this panel we did it at PAX East. With I did it at 2 different PAXs now that I think about it. But it was a panel called so it was all femme-identified people on the panel. And it was called You Game Like a Girl, Tales of White Knights and Trolls. And PAX was putting it online, and they said we currently have, at this point, we had the most record for most people banned in the chat. Because men came in there and were very upset with us. So that was kind of an interesting little trophy.
Wow.
But, yeah, we had the most bans and the most timeouts in a chat for PAX. But I'd say on a more positive note, I'd say it's always at Gen Con after we do the Gen Con show, because we've been doing it for, I always forget how many years, 7 years I've been performing at Gen Con now. After almost every single show, there's someone that comes up to me, typically a woman, who just they're tearful, and they're just saying about how powerful seeing so many different types of bodies and body types and gender presentation and trans bodies and everything like that on the stage just makes them feel that their body is worth seeing too, that their body is valid and something to be looked upon and valued and stuff like that. And some of those people I now chat with more often, and it's always a really heartwarming experience to know that me simply going out and doing a thing I love changes people's feelings about themselves. I'd say in the worst, and it's not even a con, but it was just such a wild experience. D20 Burlesque got booked to perform at a LARP many, many years ago. And it was really wild. It was this like, it kind of breaks your brain, where we were LARPing as a burlesque troupe in this LARP. So we were all LARPing as burlesque performers. And this is a LARP that has to do with zombies. And so I was just going in with this like, okay, I'm going to do a burlesque show. And wouldn't it be funny if for my last act, I do an act where I like turn into a zombie during the act? But like half the crowd was there to be like, oh, we're at a LARP, but this is fun. We're going to watch this burlesque show. And half of them were still in their LARP mentality. So when I became a zombie during the act, a bunch of them got up to start to fight me. And they had to like, the host had to like step in and be like, we're going to go take care of her out back. Right. It was like, is wild. I didn't expect for it to cause that reaction. And now in retrospect, that makes sense. They were staying in character, but it was like, whoo, this is a new one for like my burlesque records. Where I finish an act and some of the audience members want to try to like kill me.
Check that off your list there of things.
Exactly. It's wild.
I want to say hello back to Anthony Kennedy, who's joining us from Facebook. And we do have a LARP and burlesque. Where do I sign up? One of the comments here. So there's already somebody like, how do I do that?
Yeah. If you run a LARP and you want burlesquers to come in and LARP as burlesquers, I'm your girl. We'll figure that out.
We could make that happen. Yeah. And I will say, when it comes to a lot of the conventions, it's like, and I think this goes back to the cosplay is not consent that you guys saw on the screen earlier, that we were talking about earlier, is that people are very committed and passionate about these characters that we love. And we're dressing up like them because we have a love of them. So it's not that we don't know that love is there. It's that you don't need to touch, speak, or do anything for us because we already chose to wear the costume. All you need to do as the audience or person looking is at least say, if you want to take a picture, hey, I'd like to shake your hand. Hi, I'd like to know more about whatever it is. But the idea that you can just reach out and touch is like, no, never a good thing. And I understand people were in character, but I know in those moments it's like, oh my God, because for myself, I was performing we got booked for a biker rally. Craziest. I don't know if you've ever done burlesque at a biker. It was a rally. It wasn't the bar. It was like a biker rally thing where they had driven and then they stay somewhere. And then we were like the evening entertainment. And that's right. Keep your hands to yourself, Luligan. Very good. We were the evening entertainment. And so it's very much this idea of like, oh, well, you're here to entertain, so therefore you're here to talk to. And we did speak to everyone. It wasn't that. But there was this like, well, I'm going back to my place. And we were all like, yeah, we're going back to our room. Like, no, like that's not part of anybody's contract on this bill. And I'm laughing about it because it is just uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable feeling. It's an uncomfortable place to be. And I think that's one of the other things with the show. And one of the questions I have for both of you is, in what con have you felt the most, I'm going to use the word safe because I can't think of one, or protected might be the word, where you feel like, hey, I went to this place and they had X, Y, and Z for me as either a queer person, as someone either feminine presenting, someone who is an other, just, I felt like I could be here and I felt like they heard me and I felt like there was an action taken to keep me okay. Anja, I know you just spoke, so I'm going to have Clever go ahead and start to this one, because I know you have a home con that kind of like has dealt with this. I know that they had some sexual allegations that have been made, and an actual sexual predator who had to be removed, and even more things. So that's one of the reasons I do kind of want to feel free to speak about whatever you feel like is your safe spot, which would probably be your home con, and also another con if you also feel like, hey, there's another con that's also fantastic with this.
Wait, I'm sorry, there was a lag and you kind of.
Okay. It's not a problem. Clever, whenever.
Was that directed to me or?
Yes. Well, I'd love for you to start.
So the con that I feel the safest at, it's a good one. It's probably a toss-up between Anime Boston. Anime Boston has always been a place where a few times people have given me a hard time, and security there has always been amazing. I had a problem with a person years ago, and I found out that this person that had harassed me was going to be at Anime Boston, so I kind of gave them a heads up, and they were like, boom, on top of it, telling me where to go, who to talk to, giving me phone. Like they had a list of all these things to make sure that I was safe. Like they were incredible. Egregious 50-50. I feel completely safe walking down the corridor as a trans person. But sometimes I feel like if something happens that's unusual and not necessarily the norm, the security, depending on who they have at the time, might believe you, they might not. Recently, they've been a lot better. Like the year that I had problems with someone stalking me and following me into the bathroom, and it was a disaster. They didn't believe me because she was a woman. Like they didn't believe that a stalker could be a woman. Because they were writing everything down, and then when I said something like she, and they were like, really? And they laughed. But then like the security team previous year, I reached out to them because I was concerned, and they just came back with the same kind of list that Anime Boston had. And I walked into the con and they pulled me aside. They're like, hey, this is what we look like. This is what we're wearing. We all have our little walkie-talkies. These are our numbers, blah, blah, blah. So I feel like that one's kind of 50-50, depending on who's working. Yeah, I feel very safe in New York Comic-Con, but I think that's just because of sheer volume. I feel like if something goes wrong, there's hundreds of thousands of people around to help you if need be. But yeah, that's
those would be your top ones in that list.
My top ones.
Really, yeah, them going ahead and having a procedure that they clearly know how to implement and implement swiftly has been what makes the you said Anime Boston, 50 on Arisha, and NYC. NYC is a big one, like you were saying, and I completely agree. It's easy to get lost in there, but yeah, they do jump on anything like, wait, what?
Yeah,
you're like, how did you find?
Yeah, I've been with people that have had like less than pleasant experiences with someone, and I'm like, dude, it took me 3 hours to get from where I'm standing to the bathroom. I don't know how this security guard suddenly just appeared to go. Like they are fast. like, dude, I don't know where you came from, but he was right there. Like, what can we do?
It's like they've got like a 9 3/4 somewhere that you're just like,
yeah, they come up from the sewers like they're Ninja Turtles or something. It's really bizarre.
There's just gonna be a little mass set here. Like someone called Michelangelo.
Oh yeah. I was like, dude, where the hell did you come from?
Like, hi, thank you. Anya, same question. Feel free to share the name of the con or just the experience.
Yeah, the thing that's a little tricky with me is that it's been years since I've gone to a con just to go to a convention. Almost all the times when I'm going to a convention, it's for business. It's because I'm running a show. So I think that's a little bit different. But I will say, like, of the conventions that I've performed at, I do feel like Gen Con does a pretty good job of, like, they have a lot of security. They kind of check in with us beforehand. I feel that they understand that we as performers are performers who, because we're on a stage, need a little bit of extra attention. Like they're aware that, like I remember at one of the shows I had somebody be like, do you want like a walk back to your car, or do you want to walk back to the hotel just in case someone's sticking around or something like that? And I think that that's really good. And it's tricky too, because I feel like Gen Con has been very good with like LGBT stuff and gender stuff. Like obviously I cannot speak to racial stuff, but like I feel like they've been pretty good. But it's also interesting because that's the one that's in Indiana, which is a really conservative state. And like, if you're on the Gen Con like Facebook groups, like it's a very divided audience that's there. But I'd say the people that do come to the shows are pretty good. And even when I've like worked, we have Magdalena Fox runs a booty short company, Booty and the Geek, and I would often help her table there. And every now and then you'd get someone who was like a little shisty. They'd say something a little like fat shamey or something like that. And you could pretty usually kind of correct them and they would just go about their business. So I'd say I never super felt threatened as like a queer woman at that convention. And if anything, I felt that they understood the risk. Like I remember when Anita Sarkeesian was like one of the speakers, they took it really, really serious. Like they had a lot of security, they had a lot of people, they were willing to kick people out at that convention who were causing issues. So I respect a convention that is willing to take a stance to keep marginalized people safe.
Yeah. And I've been to, like I was saying before, I've been to Arisha and I've been to Gen Con, and both of them have been really good as far as procedurally. Like I still think that some of the best compliments I ever got were from, I think, those two cons, and it was very smooth. Like I don't think I worked Gen Con, but I definitely worked Arisha, and I was very nervous because they are not diversified. They weren't when I was there. I know they're changing up and changing their tactics to get there, and just adding some more people in. But I definitely, felt fine to walk in and go ahead and work in this space. I've never been around a lot of people who are not brown, and still came out of it with some very nice people who were like, hi, oh yeah, told me about this, told me about that, to the point that I felt comfortable walking around the main halls and stuff like that with no problem. And I guess my other thought process is, I know you, Mr. Clever, Mr. Clever is a villain technically, and you do a panel about being a villain at a con.
Yep.
What's the name of the panel? It's something about
it was literally called How to Be a Villain Without Being a Dick.
Yes. Yes.
We had, I'm not even kidding, we had little Will Wheatons on a stick that said, don't be a dick. Yeah, I'm not even joking.
Yes, I remember. It was, and it's interesting because I think that's the other thing is, especially when you're playing a villain, they will go ahead and they will think that's that other, oh, I need to fight you. I know you're talking about that with the zombie situation. Like, oh, and it's like, I'm still a normal human being underneath all this. I do love the character, but that doesn't mean I've walked around as Mr. Glass, and I've had people who were like, they asked me about killing somebody or something like that. And I was like, And I was in a totally weird, it was Exotica. I was Mr. Glass at Exotica, very strange story that someday we'll get into. But I was shocked at the comments people made and pictures people wanted to take with me, because I was like, there are half naked people halfway around here, and you are walking up to me with a very straight face saying, is it okay if I take your picture? Is it, asking for this level of consent that I was like, I don't usually even get this at the regular much less one that I happen to be dressed for, and everyone else is barely dressed, looking gorgeous and beautiful, men, women, everything under the sun. So yeah, it was definitely a very different idea, having a villain, being a villain. But at those two cons specifically, I think that there is actually not even those two cons. I think any con that has, this is our practice and this is how we implement it, is really what you're going for. Whether you're looking for it as somebody who's a blurred, as somebody who is stepping outside the binary idea and in another category, that's really the key, is that, hey, what is your practice and how do you implement it? And when you start get that, that's when there's a pause in my mind when I'm trying to pick out a con to go to, when I am going to cons. And I want to shout out, I'm shouting out Booty and the Geek. Sorry. Shouting out Booty and the Geek for being an amazing size inclusive clothing maker. I think maybe we might have to have Booty and the Geek in one of our next seasons. If they would grant us an audience, it would be amazing. But yeah, they are fantastic. I have looked at a lot of their stuff. I have not found my perfect geekdom with them, but I always eyeball it. I'm like, that looks so good. That looks so good. That looks so good. I know many people all across different presentations across the board who are in love with Booty and the Geek, and I'm always happy to see that their selection so large and their actual sizing has such a great span.
Awesome.
Getting back to the two of you, I would absolutely love to know, how did you spend your initial quarantine time? Because I know everyone was doing different things along the way. Some of it was productive, making money, making it work, and some of it was not, but fun. So what was something that you guys were like, hey, during the quarantine I actually started doing this thing and I didn't realize it was going to take off?
Yeah, I could start. Mine was definitely Twitch streaming. It was a thing that my wife does not like being in front of the camera. And hello, I'm here. I'm always in front of the camera. I'm on stage in front of the camera. And so she's always just like, oh, it'd be so fun if you did this. It'd be so fun if you did this. And so, like things started shutting down in March. And as a person who runs nightlife, I'm like, well, that's my revenue. That's my business. So I started thinking about like, well, what's other things I can do to stay active, to keep the name Anja Keister going, and to like grow, to diversify my performance portfolio. So I started doing it, and it was a really nice way to keep in contact with others, to chat, to also like just disconnect for a while and play a video game. Fans came out and like wanted to support me, which was great. And then it worked really well when my wife went to China for the first time. She was able to watch my Twitch streams, so it was a really nice way to be able to like connect with her. She might be watching this one right now. She's back in China. She might be watching this right now, for all I know. But it became a really nice way to basically connect and build a new community virtually, while also just like having fun and being nerdy and making jokes and stuff like that. And that has now actually become what I do more than anything else, is Twitch streaming. So that's been a wonderful thing to come out of this.
That's awesome.
Clever?
Mine was traumatizing at first. I'd say like the first couple of weeks, because con life is like my everything, like going to cons and dressing up. And I can't stress enough how bizarre it is for me to just do this. I have always had a horrible time with anything video. Like 8 years of being this character, and I think the pandemic was the first time that I ever got on video, ever, in the span of this costume. Even when I used to show horses, which I don't anymore, I stopped, because if I saw someone with a camera, I have literally passed out, fallen off my horse, and been trampled. Like, I see a camera, and especially if it's video, I freak the F out. So for me to have started a TikTok account and to like put the costume on and start doing stupid little crazy TikTok videos, and then I just started doing more and more and more and more, that was huge. I would have never in my life, I mean, honestly, it took a global pandemic for me to do video, but I would never, ever have done that if it wasn't for the pandemic, because I wanted to put my costume back on. I love being this character, and it was the only, like, what else can I do? And I painted a lot. I sold a lot of my sculptures and stuff, so I've been incredibly creative, but the video is huge for me.
Yeah. And now, I know in the middle of the pandemic and everything, even myself included, was getting my camera and all this other stuff. But as you guys are moving forward from, I know we're still in a pandemic, I'm not trying to make it that we're not, but as you're moving forward with your projects, what is new on the roster when it comes to Mr. Clever and when it comes to Anja Keister? Mr. Clever, go ahead and start us out, please.
I, for the first time in like 8.5 years, have finally decided to go for a second costume. And that was another huge thing that, again, I don't think would happen if not for the pandemic. I love this character. He's I mean, my legal middle name is literally Clever. Like, I changed it. I love this character so much. He's my life. But he's a bitch to wear. This is a friggin' pain in the ass. Like, it is such a difficult costume to wear. It takes me an hour to put this on, an hour to take it off. Like, it's hell. So I finally put together a Paul Atreides costume from the new Dune movie. And, and I'm putting on, like, the Atreides outfit or the little desert outfit. And I'm like, dude, this is so easy. I can eat in this. I can't eat solid food with this on. Like, I'll go 10 hours at a con. Fox has been there with me. And I can't chew. I can't do anything. I have to be careful who's on my left. I can't really hug people. And I'm like, this is great. Give me all the foods. I can hug everyone. Like, that's been a lot of fun. I've always been a huge fan of Dune, so that was like a no-brainer as soon as I saw the new one.
The phrase that just came across, it's the commitment for me, and you are definitely committed to this character, Miss Clever, and it's one of the things I love about you. And then Anya, what is new on the horizon that you have kind of brewing? I know you're talking about the Twitch. Anything else, or is that like, hey, I'm also in the middle of?
Yeah. I mean, one of the big things that came up during the quarantine, the pandemic and stuff like that was having more virtual shows. And some people did. So there's the one. So Gen Con went virtual. So we did 2 virtual Gen Con shows. This is the one that Fox was also in. You can peep there. And one of the big conversations that came out of it is that having virtual shows does make it that more people can watch it who can't attend a con, or for just like regular burlesque shows, people who are immunocompromised, people who are disabled, people who have kids and can't find sitters, people with social anxiety. Like, having a virtual show opens up a space for them to see acts and performances that they normally wouldn't see. And there was a big shift that when things started to like lax during the summer with safety, people started doing live shows again. There was a big talk about people being upset where they're like, well, are the virtual shows just going to disappear? And so one of the things I'm going to try to do is, I can't, at my venues, we don't have the high enough speed internet to stream the shows live. But I'm going to start, I think, recording more of our shows and selling post-show tickets for those. And, with how New York City is going right now, I'm currently trying to figure out to do another virtual show because a lot of people are staying in again and doing that. So, I look forward to getting out there and doing the live shows at conventions again and all of that. But, I think virtual shows are really nice, and they make it for people who are disabled or who have other things that make it that they can't attend things live all the time. I want to keep those virtual shows going.
And then as we're talking about the virtual show aspect, do you feel like the virtual show is offering you that same connection with the audience? Because I know, Clever, you were saying you did the virtual masquerade, and I think you sent in pictures. It wasn't a live thing, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So how has that pivot been into a virtual show or a virtual masquerade? How have you felt about it? Anja, go right and head start, and then Clever, you can just jump in whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I'd say virtual shows are not better or worse. It's a very different connection with an audience. And it's similar to like my Twitch one, where when you're performing on a stage live, you are visually connected with an audience, but you're not getting that, and you're hearing feedback, but you're not getting to see it in real time. And the virtual shows that I do have mainly been live performances. I might do one with some pre-recorded acts, but they've mainly been live. And it's really beautiful. The way I always talk about it when I'm hosting is that normally when you're at a show, you can't turn to your neighbor and be like, that was amazing. How great was that? This is fantastic. Because you have to be quiet. It's a show. But it's really cool to see with our live Nerdlesque shows, to see the chat talking with each other and making friends in like real time and cheering for each other. And I can do my act, and then I can go back through the chat and see what the audience was saying during my act. So like, that's been a really cool experience. With the Gen Con show this year, we did it. Maki Roll closed out the show, and halfway through her act, her camera cut out. And it's this amazing act as Waluigi. It was to WAP. And it was like so good, and it cut out halfway through, and so like I had to jump in as the host, and I was just like, oh man, that was so good. What do you think would have happened had we seen the ending? And like the chat was there, they loved it, they were chatting, they were talking about how great it was, and then like Maki came back, and I was like, came back and we could hear her, but we couldn't see her yet. And I was like, do you want to start from where we stopped the music, or do you want to start from the beginning? She's like, oh no, they're getting the whole show again. And the chat just like went wild and like freaked out. And it was just a beautiful moment of seeing this, like everybody rooting for the save thing at the same time and being able to talk about it other than just like cheers. Like is really cool to see. So not better or worse, just like really different, but a new way of connecting.
And then for you, Clever, how is the virtual masquerades? And also, I think you you also attended virtual Regia as well.
I did not.
Oh, you did not. You just did the masquerade. Understood. Got it.
I have zero interest in anything virtual. I'm just going to be completely honest. I hate it all. I can't stand it. I'm like, I don't want to do it. I have not done a virtual con because I have zero interest. I'm like, the beauty of cons for me is interacting with people. So I have zero, like I don't normally go to panels. I don't usually go to shows. I go to the vendor room. I go to shop. I go to talk to people. I go take photos. I run down the hallways with my friends. So if I don't have that, this sounds horrible, but I have zero interest in seeing a panel on my phone. I've never done a masquerade. I've never competed before, but I did compete with, because the Regia masquerade, it wasn't, the one that I did, it wasn't judged. So that's right. Yeah. Come to think, I'm glad you brought that up because that's the only reason why I did it. It was just like a showcase of costumes.
Okay,
got it. The only time I competed virtually was for San Diego WhoCon. It's a Doctor Who specific con, and that was the only time I've ever competed with one of my costumes. And that was virtual. I liked doing it virtual because I could explain the process that went into making the Borderlands one, and that's literally it. I feel bad. It's not my thing.
Hey, virtual is not supposed to be for everyone, but I do have to say that Anja's idea of keeping that accessibility is super important in my mind, especially because there are cons that they want to make it all accessible. And I know they do. As I've been talking to some founders and like that, they want it all to be accessible, but they just can't have ramps in certain places, or the venue they chose just is not accessible enough for every single person and their capabilities. And so having that virtual option is fantastic. It's so interesting because I was talking to friends who were like, yeah, I've had, it's the accessibility for me. I've had friends who were telling me like, yeah, there have been restaurants and even cons who they were like, I could never go. I've never been able to go either because of a budgetary constraint, either because of accessibility, and that virtual world opened it up for them. But then I've had people with the exact same tonality as you, Mr. Clever, where it's like, no, I don't want to be in this virtual space. I want to go and like be in the same space as somebody else. So yeah, I think that it's supposed to be a mixed bag because there was never supposed to be just one solution to cons. I think we did get into, and I say we because I've been to enough cons to know there were some cons I went to that I know people who could not go because of some sort of limitation or some sort of capability issue. So being able to offer that is so amazing. But I think it needs to be coupled with that live. As you were saying with the nightlife, there's still a difference there of being in front of someone and being able to shake their hand versus the other. So yeah, and I would say as people are looking for cons, whether you're looking for one and you're wanting it to be a really safe con, and you're wanting it to be one that's very inclusive to whatever is your sexuality or whatever it is, the other thing is that accessibility. Like, does the con have accessibility? And remembering that as you're supporting them with your dollars, like if you're supporting a con that's not accessible to everyone, is that good for, are you okay with that? Are you not okay with that? either one is okay for what you want, but just realize that as you support a con that has chosen to not be accessible, you are supporting a con that is probably not going to make a pivot to an accessibility unless there is some sort of big major event like a global pandemic. So it's something to think about as you're putting that money out for these cons and going to them. And it's not to discourage anyone, but it's definitely to think about that as you're thinking about your personal safety. Also, what your money is saying about what you believe as a person. So yeah, so we got into that very heavy moment.
Yeah, no, and it's like I feel like the pivot to virtual for a lot of this, and now the pivot out of it or the hybrid that's come out of it is like much like a breakup or like a bad therapist. Like going and experiencing that is there's still value in it because now you know what you don't like. so for some people they went and they like tried the virtual and they're like, well, I now know I do not like virtual performing, and that's good. It's good to know stuff about yourself. So
yeah, I feel like the virtual also is, in my mind, it's so much extra work. Like when I did the Gen Con, the last Gen Con one, I had to think about my background. Normally it's just a stage, so I never think twice.
Yeah.
I'm up on that stage. I've got my costume on. I might have a prop, but that's it. This one, my partner actually like designed and implemented my background for my Mr. Glass act, so it looked like an insane asylum because
so
I was
cool.
like, people are gonna see this background. They're gonna see all of this.
Yeah, it was so cool. But
Yeah, I had a really hard time with that myself. Like my house is a little older and it's notorious for being dark. Like we don't have a lot of good lighting. So I invested in the light ring, which I have, but I don't have a lot of like interest in spots in my house. Like I don't mind this because all my Doctor Who stuff is in the background. But then I legitimately had to have someone come in and put a door, like put in an actual door to one of my rooms so I had a place to lock up all my 7 cats. Because I have had cat butt in front of the camera. I have had like a paw come over here and knock everything down. So I literally had to do construction on my house. So I had a place to shove all 7 of them while I do these videos. And even then, you can hear them in the background. Yeah, scratching at the door. I'm like, oh, for the love of God. Like,
you know, I just embraced it. When I host shows, I often have to pick up my cat, and I just hold my cat while I'm hosting. I've had cats pull down like backdrops while I'm performing, and it's one of those things. If you are a perfectionist and you're going for a specific thing, it can be annoying. For me, I'm just embracing the chaos of it and just being like, you know what? Hey, I'm very queer. Meet my cat. He also wants to be a star. So you can't stop a cat. That's what I've learned. You cannot stop a cat.
No. Yes, there are so many loving pets in this life. And I guess our last thing to kind of touch upon, I would love to kind of see if there's any other shout outs that you guys would like to do for something else that you're working on. Because I know you did tell me, I know, Anja, you said the Twitch, as well as, you're producing shows. So if you have a show, feel free to say something. And Mr. Clever, if there's anything else. Actually, and now that I'm thinking about it, before I do that, Mr. Clever, you have a pizza named after, like, you have your own pizza, correct? Because I could have sworn we went and we had Mr. Clever. Is that
yes, because the amount of jokes that came out of that is like, hey, you tasty. That was we have a wonderful. I live in Salem, Massachusetts. For those of you that don't know, and I love my hometown. Like, there's no other place like Salem. We have this really cool little pizza place called Flying Saucer Pizza. And at the time, one of my best friends, Mandy, I think she was like an actual manager, taking care of the menu and all the fun stuff. And I barely knew her at the time. And one of my other friends, Michelle, she sends me this link and she's like, dude, there's a friggin' Mr. Clever pizza. And she made it for me. It was vegetarian. It had all the things that I could eat. It didn't have any of the things that I couldn't eat. I was like, what? And it became a thing every May 11th, which was when Nightmare in Silver aired. We would all go down there, and then we eventually started having Clever parties, and it just became a thing. And I've had to rent halls and everything. But every May 11th we have the Mr. Clever pizza. But yeah, they made it for me.
I love that story. Sorry, I didn't want to. And I was like, oh,
No,
that's
it's
right,
fine.
Mr. Clever Pizza. We have to talk about the Mr. Clever Pizza. And I think now, Anja, and the second thing that popped into my head. Now, Anja, when you first started back in 2010, there was not a burlesque show at Gen Con. Is that correct?
No, there was one at Gen Con.
Okay.
There was Glitter Guild
Okay.
was doing it. And as my show was about gaming, I wanted to do the Gen Con, which is like the premier gaming convention. And they were really good. It was Miss Pixie and I can't remember the other person's name off the top of my head. But I like reached out to them and it's just like, hey, do you feel okay sharing this? And it was really like heartwarming where they're like, as a business, we don't want a competitor, but as like nerds, we want more of you all there. So we have just like an agreement that they perform every Thursday night and we always perform on Saturday night. So there's not a conflict. We promote each other. So it's like been a very healthy one. But awesome. I did bring shows to several conventions that had not had burlesque shows before. So it's always a fun way to reach out, you know.
Well, I remember the Gen Con. I was remembering the Gen Con because it's one of the few times I've seen where two burlesque companies are not competitors, but definitely working in tandem. And I love seeing stuff like that, especially among nerds, because for some reason, I really think people think of nerddom as a competition. I don't know if they're thinking to this like sport competitive thing and that just transfers over to the nerd, but I was like, that's not how any of this works. Like we, you know, if one of us needs something, we're like, oh yeah, did you need, I still remember somebody's cosplay one year was like, they were the Fix It, and they literally just had like duct tape, permanent markers, pens, but like on their person, they had built this suit thing, and then they were fixing people's cosplays as they walked through the halls. That was it. That was their whole like,
that's
I like
amazing.
it. And I think that mentality goes back to, as you're, you know, someone who is different from others and you're a blurred, you're a different type of nerd, you're, you know, or you're just a nerd in general, when you're going to a con, it's not that you need to find the fixed person. It's that, are you seeing that helpful love? Because it's very, in a con that's good in my mind, there is this loving moment. They're not just go to here, go there, you know, walk through the halls, move it along. There's this, hey, a camaraderie there, or suddenly you'll see. I still remember I went to the Archer panel, and at one point, all the Lana Canes they met up together, and they were like, and they called them a murder. It was a murder of Canes because it's not crows. And it was somebody on the panel, and it may have even been the voice of Lana herself. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they were like, yeah, you know, like I see the murder of Canes in the corner, because they had all met up together and were next to each other. So it's just such a loving moment. And I think as people are looking at these new cons, looking at small cons, think of these things as you're going. Hey, are you seeing camaraderie in the pictures, in the rubric of like, this is how you do things in our con? Are you seeing a procedure in place? I know that we are who we are because we have a level of rule breaking, but there should also be some rules. Like, I have been to a chaotic con with no rules, and it always sounds like, oh, I'm going to go to this like
anarchist.
Yes, there it is, anarchist style con, and then you get there and you're like, whoa, I need an adult. I need many of them.
Yeah, we have. I hate to say it, but that's basically what it's like to go to Rhode Island Comic Con.
Oh, I've never been. I've always thought about it because I have friends in Rhode Island. And yeah, one of the things that just popped up was accountability. It really is about that accountability, because regardless of what's happening in a con, if the con's not going to be accountable, if the people aren't being accountable, it's not the con to go to. It's just not the space to be, because that lack of accountability is going to trickle into literally every part as you go along. It's going to make it feel not welcoming, unsafe, and all the things you don't want. And so that's what should be kind of your key word for yourself as you're looking, is there accountability here? And I think with that, I want to say where to find you guys again. So Anja, where can we find you on IG and Twitch? I think we're going to put up on the screen.
Yep, I'm basically Anja Keister on everything. So Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, all of that. The only one I'm slightly different is on Facebook, where I'm Anja Keister Burlesque at the end of it. It's the only one. But yeah, that's where you can find me, and that's a great way. And yeah, and you talked about shout outs. If I can actually shout out something, I want to shout out the Nerdlesque Festival is being done by Maki Roll. So I want to give credit to her and to all that. And Fox, I think you're involved with it, right?
I am. I'm their accountant.
Yeah.
Or treasurer. I'm sorry. I'm their treasurer. That's my formal title.
Yeah. So the Nerdlesque Festival used to happen up in New York City, and I was part of it there at Coney Island and other places. And now it's going to be going down to the DMV area, being run by Maki Roll. And I think y'all should support it for all the blurreds out there, or people who just want to support nerds doing stuff. I think Maki's going to have an amazing new spin on it, a new take. I think it's going to bring in more convention flavor than the last one, which was just like a festival. This is going to bring some stuff. So look up the Nerdlesque Festival and follow it to support that amazing cause.
Yes. Mr. Clever. And we can find you pretty much across the board, except for Twitter. Except for Twitter. At where?
Adventures of Clever. Everything I do now, like the TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, my webpage. God, I think even Tumblr. I think I still have my Tumblr. Oh my God, I think even Pinterest. Like I just went crazy and just changed all of it except for Twitter for whatever stupid reason. But yeah, Adventures of Clever is definitely the way to go.
And
I don't have anything to shout out. I'm sorry.
Well, can you shout out the pizza place that has your pizza? I would love to know.
They're called Flying Saucer Pizza.
Say it one more time.
I don't know if they do it now that Mandy's gone, but anything in Salem is amazing. If any of you ever decide to come to Salem, Massachusetts, definitely check that place out. I guess I could give a shout out to my friends over at Die With Your Boots On. It's like the best goth shop in the world. Love that place. Best shop in Salem.
Love it. I love hearing about it. Well, I would like to give a shout out to Head Nerds in Charge for giving me this amazing platform. headnerdsincharge.com. They have apparel. There are other amazing shows and blogs and everything under the sun. So please go and support. Tell all your friends. headnerdsincharge.com. And my name is, your host is Fox Squire. If you absolutely want to follow me, you can do IG, Twitter, Facebook. It's at Fox Squire 2016. And what?
I was trying to point to you, and I'm not quite getting this whole camera thing down here. That way, Fox was the best.
I think I gestured when you both were coming in, and I think I gestured like this way or this way, and I was like, oh wait, what? I just realized I don't know which way they're coming in. Because in my head it's like the talk show where you're coming across. On that very funny, silly note, for myself, thank you all so much for being here at the Fox Den. Anja Keister, thank you so much for being here. Mr. Clever, thank you so much for being here. You guys, it is always a pleasure seeing you, and thank you for giving me this time. I know you guys have other stuff you can be doing with your night, so I'm always happy to have guests in, and I'm very happy to have seen you guys.
Yeah,
thank you so much for having us.
Yes. Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. I can't even imagine how many more hugs I'm going to be giving you when I do actually see you guys in person.
I know, right? Jeez. Let's hope for the summer. The summer.
Yes. All right. Well, that's our show. Thank you again, everyone, an audience member, for stopping into the Fox Den. This has been a moment to embrace the spectacle. Anja Keister was here. Mr. Clever was here. And I am Fox Squire, your host. You guys have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
In the crossfire. It's caught in the crossfire. Caught in the crossfire. It's caught in the Fox Squire.